All right, we're live. Welcome to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. We've had some amazing guests. I am loving these interviews. The folks that are coming on the show, and the best thing about it is they're reaching out to us, are some of the top thought leaders in cannabis, and they're coming to sit down with us, and it's been amazing. So I hope everybody has enjoyed that. We've got an awesome episode for you today. If you're paying attention to our social media, you already know who it is. But we'll get into their story in just a second. I don't want to give it away. I like to pretend that nobody knows who it is. This week, guys, we've had some shuffles. We were supposed to have Brady Cobb yesterday. As it is when we have the CEO of any organization, they run companies. They have things come up. So Brady unfortunately had to reschedule on us. We will see him Friday at 10 a.m. live. Tomorrow we have Eric Schell from Mood 33. And then on Thursday, we're going to have the 420 edition of Elevate Your Grind with Eben Britton, co-host of Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson and host of the Ebb and Flow podcast. He's also a co-founder of Athletes for Care with Riley Coate. It's going to be an amazing interview. Everybody should check that out. All right. Today's episode is brought to you by Matteo Communications. Folks, if you don't know Rosie Matteo, you don't really know the cannabis space, right? I think we all have that one friend who has so many cool experiences happen to them, but they can't tell a story for the life of them. Well, people in business, things are no different. If you can't tell your story, then no one is going to listen to you. Rosie Matteo and her team of experts have sorry, this is my first live commercial read, and we're not doing good. Rosie Matteo and her team of experts will tell your story the way it needs to be heard, driving conversations, shaping perceptions, and help you achieve your most ambitious business goals. The team at Matteo understands how to navigate the ever-changing regulatory environment of industries like cannabis and even psychedelics. And this is all because of their backgrounds in tech, lifestyle, CPG, and representing over 40 industry leaders, including Ipsy, Headset, and Cureleaf, and a few of our own guests here at Elevate Your Grind. Rosie represents so many leaders. I can tell you half the time when we get a guest for the show and they want to introduce me to their PR partner, it's typically one of my friends from Matteo on the other end of the phone that's reaching out to me. So she is all over the place. Folks, if you want to learn more about Matteo and understand their full service offerings with not only just PR and marketing, but SEO, thought leadership, targeted buying, influencer marketing, social media, and even investor relations, you can check out their website at www.matteo.com. That's MATTIO.com. All right. Live reads are fun. We'll get better at those. Sorry, Rosie, but Rosie is awesome. Check her out. One of the top women in cannabis. My guest today, and I love this part, my guest today is a young entrepreneur. Funny enough, she's a friend of another young entrepreneur that's an alumni of the show. She started her career in college, as most of us don't. A lot of us were going out and boozing and probably using the services that she provided, but she was the one staying up at night figuring, how do I create a career for myself? Because I'm sure working for somebody else is not that fun. And we'll get into her story in just a second, but please welcome someone amazing in the cannabis industry. Again, even though she's younger than me, someone that I look up to, CEO and co-founder of Vangst, Karson Humiston. Welcome to the show.
Great. Well, thank you for having me on the show.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day. You know, Karson, I watch your story and it's incredible. Like I've seen the TED Talk that you've done. I've seen the interviews that you've done, and you're young and you're confident, and it's amazing. Let me ask you a question. You know, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody, and you decided that you want to be an entrepreneur in a very highly regulated environment where the goalposts are always changing, right? You never know what's going to happen. Were you always like this, or did you just happen to see an opportunity in cannabis you wanted to execute on?
No, I think that I've always been an entrepreneur from like a young age. I think my first business was a golf ball stand. So I grew up on a golf course, and at night I would go around and collect the golf balls and clean the golf balls and then sell the golf balls. And I think that entrepreneurship is part DNA and part who you surround yourself with. And I was really lucky that my parents and family and friends always supported the crazy entrepreneurial ideas. But I would say it's not like one day I just woke up and was like, I'm going to do this. I've always known that I don't think I would be a good employee. Actually, it's funny. I don't even remember how it came up, but yesterday my boyfriend was like, I don't think I think you would get fired if you tried to work for somebody else. So I don't think it's really in the cards for me anytime soon.
You know, it's funny. Some of the best entrepreneurs are the worst students and the worst employees, but they're some of the most successful people in our world. I want to back up to that golf ball stand because I saw that a little bit, and I heard about it when you were doing your TED talk at your old school, and I thought it was incredible that you claim you're a B student, you claim that you weren't a grade student, and I'm sure that that's true, but you had the option of going to summer school or starting this golf ball business, you know, within your community on the golf course in which you live. Um, it's amazing that your parents decided to let you just start the business, to have that wherewithal to think, yeah, her sitting in a classroom that she's not going to be happy in and probably do whatever she can to get out of, or ignore the teachers or whatever, with a bunch of other people who were probably not the best people for you to be around because they weren't, I don't want to generalize anybody, but they weren't trying or they weren't succeeding as well, that, hey, let her do this on her own. That's amazing to me. I mean, is that the relationship you've always had with your parents? Have they been kind of forward thinking like that?
Yeah, my dad's an entrepreneur, and he's just always been very supportive of really what I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and very supportive of whatever we want to do. I mean, I think the worst case scenario in his mind is having your kids doing something that they don't enjoy doing every single day. And yeah, I just feel really lucky that they always just encouraged us to do what makes us happy and things that we're passionate about. And that's really kind of what led me to start any small business and ultimately start Vangst.
Very cool. Yeah. And that business was so successful that you actually opened a second stand further down on the golf course, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a fun time. I was back there this summer and ran into the pro at the golf club, and he was joking around about it. I think it was like one of the craziest things that's happened to that place. But yeah, it was really fun.
I'm sure he's not surprised to see where you are now. I'll tell you that much. So fast forward to college, and you decide for the first time you're going to start, and I don't want to say a real business, but more of a scalable business. And you started a travel organization, an online travel organization. What led you to do that? Was it just the fact that you happen to be hanging out with friends? Because I noticed the two ventures between the travel organization, and I forgot the name, and Banks, you seem to try to be of service to your network. And when I say your network, fellow students, right? So was it that you happened to come in freshman year and people wanted to go here and go there and maybe they couldn't figure it out? Was it just problem solving that led you to start the first company?
So on Track Adventures, I studied abroad, and while I was studying abroad, there were so many different student travel companies. It was like the thing to do, and so you would pay a discounted price, and you would you would go with a lot of students and share hotel rooms or hostels. And because there were so many people, first off, you met a lot of people, and second off, you could get pretty discounted prices. But that's what my friends and I did to travel around and see Europe. And when I got back to St. Lawrence, I thought, wow, we go to the same 3 bars every single weekend, and in our backyard, Ottawa, Montreal, Lake Placid, we could organize a really cool trip, and all as friends go do something different for the weekend. And the first trip we did was St. Lawrence, Lake Placid weekend, and it was a really big success. Everybody had a great time, and I had friends that went to other schools, and I thought we could plan trips similar to the one that we planned at St. Lawrence for the other schools.
Very cool. So with that business, this is the thing that, and I want to talk to you about Vangst after this. You know, in college, there's a lot of distractions, right? And what people I don't think talk about enough as an entrepreneur are the sacrifices that you make for your entrepreneurship, right? It's time with your friends, time with your family, because it is time consuming, even if you hire other people and everything else. You know, what gives you the motivation to kind of make that sacrifice of your time in college? And how do you take that concept from, man, we had a really good idea or we had a really good time. How do we have other people experience this good time and take it from just that idea to actually executing it? Are you just going and throwing up a website? Are you flyering campus? How do you, I'm always enamored with the something, what I call, maybe somebody else I stole this from, the something or the nothing to something moment, right? At one point you have nothing, and then all of a sudden the next day you have something and you're executing on it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I had a great time in college, and you know, I think I had a great college experience, and there's a lot more to my college experience than just starting this company. And so sometimes people will be like, yeah, while everyone else was, hanging out and partying, Karson was just slaving away on this business. I definitely, that was not the case. There was both were going on. And so, but to answer your question about how to actually get the company off the ground, it was also really fun. I never really felt like I was just sitting there like, man, I wish I was out with my friends right now, because my friends were helping me with it. And I thought what I was doing was really fun and cool. So it never really felt like work to me either. And I think that's another trait that a lot of entrepreneurs have, or frankly, anybody that really loves what they do. You don't feel like, oh, I'm dreading going and working today. It's just, you're excited about it and you're motivated to go do it. So, yeah, I mean, we built or I should say I built a website on Wix, and it was bad, but it had the trips and you could sign up for the trips right there. And I mean, Wix and Squarespace make it so easy for anybody to make a website. And then we would go around and flyer all the dorms with just information on the trips. We would get it promoted in the school magazine and on the school website. One thing that worked well is different clubs or fraternities or sororities would have like weekly meetings. And so I'd ask if I would figure out who the president of that club or fraternity or sorority was. And I would ask if I could go and speak in front of the meeting and promote the trip. So that was something that worked well. I mean, it really came down to the strategy that we found that worked was you need to find one cool person in each group, because then once that person signs up, the rest of their friends will sign up. So if you can hook one person on the soccer team, on the lacrosse team, on the football team, in this frat, then all their friends will sign up. So it's about getting a hook within different clubs within the college.
Well, that's really cool. And I mean, that's awesome that you can start that with your friends. Like you said, I'm sure that made it a whole lot easier, because instead of just sitting around and doing, I don't want to say unproductive things, you guys are doing something that you're actually enjoying doing, and it's benefiting you both now and long term. So you have this business, it's going. I don't know how successful it was or wasn't. I'm going to assume it was doing well from everything that I saw. And you decided, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not happy with travel. I think you actually said that you were dealing with a bunch of drunks and everything else in an interview, not to call you out, but and you wanted to get into something else. So where do you go from travel to employment? Again, is it just figuring, I know all these students, I have this network, let's see what else I can offer them?
Yeah. It's so crazy when I think back on it, honestly, because I didn't even know what like a staffing agency, I certainly didn't know what a hiring marketplace or any of these other, I really didn't know the business that I was going into, but I just didn't want to be a party planner for the rest of my life. These trips are really fun, but it's fun for a college student. I was like, this is not the right movie for me. I'm not going to be a lifelong party planner. And so I knew that I never started On Track Adventures to do On Track Adventures forever. I needed to make money in college, and this was a fun way to do it. But everyone was graduating. What's the one thing that everybody needs? Jobs. So I emailed everybody asking what industries they were interested in getting jobs in. And an overwhelming response wrote back saying they were interested in jobs in the cannabis industry. I didn't know much about the industry. I went to a trade show, and at the trade show, I was very impressed by the types of companies in the space. So from cultivation companies to extraction companies to retail companies to all the ancillary services, I was impressed by the industry. And I mean, at this time, there was only 4 markets that had adult use. It was Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and I think Alaska. And so it was nowhere near the size of the industry today. And I asked them what positions they were hiring for. And there's a laundry list of positions, from an entry-level bud tender or trimmer to a director of cultivation, chief revenue officer. And hiring was a huge pain point for them. They were very restricted in how they could go about advertising their businesses and their jobs. There's a huge stigma around cannabis jobs. And there was a lot of regulatory hurdles that they had to get through, like the badges. In Colorado, you have to have a med badge. And so making sure they were only bringing in candidates who had that badge, and like just the access to candidates and the vetting process and the regulatory components just made hiring very challenging. And so I said to them, okay, I have a company called Graduana. I went and had these business cards made that said, Graduana. If you Google Graduana, go ahead. You're going to say something.
So quick question about that. I read this story. Did you do this in the middle of the conference?
Mm-hmm.
Like literally like call it a 3-day conference, like day one, you're in FedEx making cards. Like, okay, I'm taking advantage of this.
Yeah, like end of day one, on the phone with, his name's Raj, and he was the graphic designer I used to design the On Track Adventures logo. Like, all right, Raj, this is what we need. We need a graduation cap with a weed leaf coming off the side. Just say, put my name and say like, founder and president is what I initially went with. And yeah, the next day I went back there with he designed it. I went over to FedEx, I got them printed, and I went back there and I said, we met yesterday. Coincidentally, I have a company called Graduana. I can help you find an intern or a recent college graduate. Tell me the job that you need. And they're like, oh, great. We need an accounting intern. We need this. So I was just walking through saying, okay, open vape, accounting intern, and writing it down, the jobs. It's like, great. I'll call you next week. Went back to St. Lawrence. Actually, the other day I was like, we relaunched our website recently. We did a little brand refresh. And so I was sharing with the team and some of our investors pictures of the first website. I can show them to you, but I mean, the website was just terrible. Like, you can't get a worse website than graduana.com. And I went back to the library and I made this website, and I put all the jobs up that I talked to. So, I said like open vape, accounting, internship. And then I emailed all the students and recent grads, all the people in my network, and said, hey, people said they were interested in jobs in cannabis. I actually took it upon myself to go to a trade show and find jobs in cannabis. Here they all are. And I also put them on internship.com and like other places. And I just hid on these job boards that it was cannabis. And I was just getting flooded with applications through my own site and through other job boards. And I was like, wow. So then I started calling of course, I hadn't said to the companies, like, here's how much I'm going to charge you. Here's a contract, or something like that. So I started calling the companies back like, hey, I have like 7 applicants for you. This is great. And companies weren't really getting back to me from remote. And I just now I had all these candidates and I thought things were good. And I was like, you know what? I need to go get in front of them. They're not going to answer me on the phone. I need to graduate and move to Denver to get in front of these people with the candidates. I've sourced them. So yeah, I graduated and then I moved out to Denver, and then Open Vape was our first client. It was the July 15th, I think, is the date they signed, or they said they would sign, and $500.
So just past the anniversary of that.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're right. I should have remembered that. And they signed up for an accounting intern. The contract, they were like, okay, do you have a contract or anything? And the contract's also a joke. It's like a thing you like fill out with a pen. And it was $500, $250 up front, $250 when I found the accounting intern. And I found this intern named Kiara, and I think she actually still works there. And it was a great first of many placements.
That's an amazing story. You literally, you wanted to make a shift. You saw a need, went to a conference, and within a day, you had a card. You had a website a little bit later, and now that was the beginning of Vangst. I mean, what now, fast forward to today, I mean, last I saw, and I think these numbers are old, you have 63 employees. You've placed 10,000 people in jobs. I feel like I'm extremely lowballing here. You're on the Forbes 30 under 30, and Vangst is one of the biggest companies in the cannabis space. And this all started day one at night at a conference by dreaming up a logo and just putting a plan into action. I think that's an amazing story for other people to tell. One thing I noticed that you mentioned about your first website with the travel organization, and now with the first iteration of Vangst or Graduana, is that you say that these websites were terrible, right? Now, one thing I noticed that you said that entrepreneurship is 50% DNA and 50% the environment, and maybe this plays into the environment aspect. Do you think a lot of people are afraid to take the steps with entrepreneurship because either A, they have a mortifying fear of failing, or B, that they're so wildly insecure that they're afraid to put anything that they created? I don't want to say wildly insecure, but insecure enough that they're afraid to put something they've created out into the ether and be judged by the people that they know.
Well, I searched on my phone, Canton, New York, and I can just show you, like, oh, you probably can't see it, but I mean, can you see
wow.
that? I mean, that's
I can see it.
Graduana, like, .com. It says like sign up for $1.99 a month. I don't even remember what I was trying to, what someone I don't know where I was going with that one, but $199 a month. I sent my investors a picture of that the other day, and I was like, "Are you guys happy we charge more than $199 a month now?" But your question. Sorry, I got distracted looking at the website. Your question was
No
around
worries.
people.
You're using the low technology that we love on this show anyway by putting your phone up to the camera. I do that often. But my question was, do you think that entrepreneurship, going off the environmental factors, that one of the things that stop people from doing it is they're afraid to put something that they've created out into the ether to be judged by everybody that they know, their friends and family?
I totally think that's probably a reason why people don't do it. I mean, it's scary that thinking about if your idea doesn't work, if you'll fail, but I don't know. I think a lot of founders, their business doesn't work out and then they go on and they start another one. Or I read an article the other day about someone who had 4 failed businesses, and on his 5th one, he exited for over $1 billion. So I don't think that people should be nervous about failing if they really believe in their idea. I think they should go for it. And it's better than not. You would rather not look back. Like how about this? You have a really good idea and you think about it all the time and you don't do it, and then someone else does it and it turns out to be the next Uber, right? Then you'd really be beating yourself up. So I wouldn't want to look back and say, I should have done that. That's kind of my stance on it. I'd rather fail at something and at least say I tried than live a life of regretting not doing it, not trying it.
No, and that definitely makes sense. And I agree with you. I think people need to get over that initial fear. I mean, just to share a personal experience of mine, a lot of things people don't realize, I think it was 10 or 12 years ago with one of my first jobs, call it 8 to 10 years ago, right? Because I was into it a little bit. I was actually asked to do something like this and start kind of a podcast. And I remember I wrote the first episode and I remember thinking like, I don't want my friends seeing this. Like, I was confident in my abilities, but for some reason, like it felt cheesy to me, I was doing work. And this was, almost 10 years ago. Fast forward now, I sit here and I get to interview people like yourself. And this is one of the most fun things I've ever done, right? Now, granted, I wouldn't even compare this podcast to Vangst, but it's something that I get to do every day that I really enjoy. And then I get to literally just sit and have conversations with people like you and learn from the best, and then apply that to what I'm doing here. So, I think more so, I think everybody should learn a lesson from Karson, but you can see that there are people out there that don't take a lesson from me. It took me 10 years to get over that fear to put one out there. But the people, if they get over that fear, they can accomplish amazing things. So you started Vangst, you started growing. At what point did you realize that you needed to go out and raise capital for this business? Where did it go from just you bootstrapping it, hiring people? Also, with that question, when you started Vangst, did you bring some of your team from your last company as well? Do you have your friends with you?
No, they didn't. No, my friends from On Track Adventures. I mean, I owe them. I didn't really pay them, but they got to go on the trips for free. So it was kind of a no employee type of business or commission. Like the rest of it was commission only if they weren't my friends. And you get to go on the trip for free. So no, I didn't bring any friends. To answer your question about when we raised capital, so in May of 2016, we had rebranded to Vangst, and I really kind of consider that our launch because doing Graduana was very experimental, learning the industry, me and one other person. So it wasn't really a business until we launched with Vangst, which was May of 2016, and now that's kind of like our anniversary. So we just had technically our 4-year anniversary. But anyway, in the spring of 2018, we started thinking, okay, if we could build a technology platform, we could make matches happen a lot faster. Right now, at the time, we were limited to just our recruiters. And so in order to scale, we would just have to keep hiring and recruiter. And we thought if we could build a hiring marketplace, particularly on the temporary side of our business, Vangst Gigs, where a candidate can build a profile, see a gig, apply to the gig, clock in and out, that'll save us a lot of manual labor. And so when we started thinking about wanting to build a transition from a services business to a technology business, that's when we started thinking about raising venture capital.
What was that experience like? So 2016, so 4 years ago, You graduated in 2015, so I'm guessing you must have been 22, 23. You don't need to confirm that, but being this young person in a nascent industry like cannabis, what were those first initial VC meetings like? Was it tough for you to raise capital? Were people taking you seriously?
It was not. Now look, this is not the experience that most people have. I did not have a hard time raising capital at all, and I feel lucky about that. But so we raised in to answer your question about how old I was. So we raised it would have 2018. I was 25, and no, nobody made any comments about my age. I explained the business that we had built and where we were going to go with it. And we actually started out talking to primarily cannabis investors, and we had a couple term sheets from great partners. And then my friend Ryan Smith from LeafLink connected us to Lair Hippo. They're in New York. They're certainly not a cannabis fund, although they had invested in LeafLink. And after I met with their team, it was very clear they would be the strongest lead and great partners to bring into Vangst. And so they ultimately ended up leading the seed round. And yeah, it was a great process and a great experience, and we love working with them.
It's crazy that you know Ryan Smith. So we interviewed Ryan, I want to say last week or the week before. I mean, you guys are definitely cut from the same cloth. Have you guys known each other for a while? Did you meet through the cannabis space or?
Super funny story about Ryan. And so Ryan lives in New York and I live in Denver. But when he started, he was at MJ Biz, and I walked up to his booth and introduced myself, and I said that I could help him find his. He was looking for his first salesperson, and so I said I could help him find his first salesperson. So we were kind of talking about that, and then oddly enough, we were both renting seats out of this place called Galvanize, this co-working space in Denver. And one night we hadn't put two and two together that he was Ryan from LeafLink and I was Karson from, probably at the time it was still Graduana. And it was late at night, like maybe 9 at night. And I was sitting in an open seat over here and he was sitting over here. And we started talking to each other about what the other person was building. And we realized like he was Ryan with LeafLink, I was Karson. And then he ultimately ended up hiring us to help him find his first sales hire, Mally, who he hired, and she absolutely crushed it. For LeafLink, was a phenomenal first hire. And yeah, Ryan and I stayed really close friends, and he's definitely my closest founder friend in the space. And I mean, LeafLink is just absolutely killing it. And he then connected us to Lair Hippo. So it's just great friendship, and they have a great business, and they've been a client of ours for a long time.
Very cool. Do you find, I mean, I know this is kind of your first, not want to say your first foray, but this is one of your second venture. Do you find that the cannabis industry is like that there's a lot of founders, a lot of people that are more willing to help each other versus trying to just compete and say, kind of having that standoffish attitude that you'd see in a lot of other industries?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly consider this really my first business. I mean, you can't really consider like a business you're doing out of your dorm where you don't have employees and you don't have, a large payroll to meet every 2 weeks and investors and a lot of customers. So this is definitely my first rodeo. So I don't have a lot else to compare it to, but I would say it's a mixed bag. I think there's certainly some really unprofessional people and amateurs in the cannabis industry that I've come across, and then some other, great people that I've loved and really enjoyed working with. So I think it's been a mix.
Understood. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bad players in here, but I think when you search through and you walk the halls of these conferences, if they ever come around, that the people that you meet that you can kind of tell and become friendly with, those are the ones that are going to help you. And I think there's a lot of relationships like the one that you have with Ryan in this space. And I personally am of the belief that if we help each other, we can all be successful because this industry still needs to grow and this industry still needs its place in the world, right? It's not a place where we need to be cut through yet, but I could be wrong. Um, you know, have you seen an emergence of other players coming into your space now? I mean, I know that you had mentioned when you first started Graduana that a lot of job boards would take down these cannabis company postings, but I believe Indeed will allow them now. Do you see competition from some of the major players encroaching?
Certainly. I mean, I think there's a difference I mean, Indeed is a job board. You're not going to find your temporary employee that has been vetted and screened and can clock in and clock out and go to the gig and They don't take care of the workers' compensation or anything. So they're kind of different business models. But yeah, when we started, I don't think people were posting their jobs at Indeed. Now, if you're looking to just hire a full-time employee, you just want to post on a job board and get cast a wide net of applicants, you can. I think the difference with Vangst is we're solely focused on this industry. We vet every single candidate that comes through. And on the gig side of our business, we employ the gig workers. We take care of the state and federal taxes, workers' compensation, badge verifications. And so there's a lot of things that we do that are specific just to this industry to make the experience more seamless for the clients and the candidates.
And I imagine that's preferential on both sides, right? Not just the employers that have, that are happy that you focus specifically on this industry so you know all the nuances, but I get the feeling that in our industry, in the cannabis space, that people looking for jobs would more likely use a service like Vangst over an Indeed or anything else because it's cannabis specific. I mean, is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's what our customers and candidates are telling us so far. And so that I think that we provided strong value in that we do specialize in this industry. We have the largest network of people that are in the space or want to get into the space, and we take care of all the regulatory components.
Sure. So right before our podcast, I wanted to get a little bit of experience going through Vangst, and I went to go create a profile just in case this whole podcasting thing doesn't work out. But I think it's awesome the way that you integrate a ton of humor into the onboarding process. At least from what as far as I was able to get. All of a sudden, it was about 4:45, and I had to get ready for this interview. But as you're kind of introducing me around to all the fields I need to fill out and everything's kind of funny, and I appreciate that, right? A lot. Job searching is not fun. A lot of stuff you do online is not fun. So to make somebody laugh while they're doing this, I think can make it very memorable. I mean, even to the point, there is a question that says, would you recommend this onboarding experience? And it said 0 to 1, no, or yes, I can't believe this is a question. I mean, it's kind of hilarious. What gave you guys the idea to integrate that humor into this and was there a fear of kind of coming across as not professional?
I don't think we had that fear. I mean, to your point, a lot of times finding a job sucks. I mean, it's if you're out of a job and you're looking for a job and you're stressed out about what your next job is going to be. I mean, it can be a really stressful thing for people. And so to try to make it less stressful in any way that we can, we thought that our candidates would appreciate. And I mean, also this is the cannabis industry. We're not helping people find jobs in banking. And so I think that it's fitting. And I mean, look, it's kind of our culture. Like we don't take ourselves super seriously. And, we take what we do and our work and the value that we're bringing to our clients and our candidates seriously, but less ourselves. And I think that we tried to get that across and make people that we work with feel comfortable. I mean, I always say that the best case scenario is that a candidate works with us. They maybe have a call with someone on our candidate success team or one of our recruiters, and they feel comfortable and they feel like they can tell us their story and they can open up to us so that we can have the best chance of helping them find a job. And so to make that, to try to put some humor into it, we thought would help with that.
No, that's awesome. And folks, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having some fun at work. And you had me cracking up there. We're not helping people find a job in banking. It's cannabis. That's definitely going to be a clip we use for promos here. So talk to me about, you've placed a lot of people. If I have that 10,000 number correct, that's a ton of people. Do you have any memorable placement stories that you can think of from the early days or more recently? Anything that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, so actually, and even crazier. So with gigs, the temporary side of our business, we actually have filled 100,000 gigs. So I mean, that's a lot of short-term jobs.
Wow.
That we filled on the gig side. So that's an even more impressive metric, I think. Granted, some of these gigs are for 5 hours, but it's still work to be work.
Still helping people find work, and that's very important.
Yeah. The Kiara story for me, the story I shared in the beginning, my first placement ever before we had a team while I was still graduana, I really had no idea what I was doing. Like I'm telling you, I didn't really realize the staffing industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I really didn't know that much about it or that much about the recruiting process. And so when I was trying to find Kiara, I was nobody from it was based in Colorado, and nobody from St. Lawrence or these other schools was really a fit for it. And so I had to go out and outbound recruit. So I was driving around to all these schools, went to the accounting department at Denver University to try to find people that were in the accounting program that might be looking for summer work. And so it was such a running around process. And I would get candidates who looked like a fit on paper, and I would ask them to go meet up with me for coffee. Then I would really take time to think about it, to think, is this the right fit for this accounting internship? All the way I'm doing this for $500. And then on the day of the interviews, I would meet up with the interns before their interview to get them prepped up, and then literally walk them to the interview. Like, the client was like, this is so strange. Why is the recruiter going up here with these interns? And they all went, and then I met with the client after and debriefed on each of the candidates. And we ultimately ended up landing with Kiara, and I called her and I told her that she was going to be getting the offer. And then on her first day, I sent lunch in, and the whole thing was just such a great experience, and I'll probably never forget it. And I think that's what we do. I know that's what we do I don't think our recruiters are stalking people to their interviews. I hope not. But that's what we do, probably in a more legitimate way now. And yeah, that's my favorite placement story.
That's really cool. I mean, I think that story kind of sets the tone for your company going forward, right? Just, and I don't know, not the stalking and everything else, but just kind of the white glove hand holding through the process. I can imagine how comfortable that made people going into an industry they know nothing about because it wasn't that popular back then. So we're at a different place now. Cannabis has been deemed essential. We see a lot of cannabis companies that are increasing their sales. They're deemed essential. They're hiring, they're bringing on people. Have you seen a massive influx of opportunity since this pandemic hit? Are people still hiring at a massive rate, and is our industry growing?
So during COVID, hiring has slowed. Actually, we did a survey and we found that it was 80% of our clients actually did layoffs or furloughs during COVID. I mean, there's certain social distancing rules, right? I mean, if you're running a cultivation facility, you can't have people on top of each other in the grow facility. So you got to space people out. And I think that during uncertain times, it's more challenging to raise capital for growth, and you want to lower your expenses. And so high headcount is a large area of a lot of people's expenses. And so cutting headcount happens, and hiring slows. And so we've seen a pretty dramatic slowdown in hiring throughout COVID. I do think we hit bottom in May, and things are starting to pick back up again. But it's interesting because, as you noted, right, the underlying demand, cannabis has gone from illegitimate and illegal to essential. So the demand for the product is there. And I think it's really starting to become proven that cannabis is recession proof. Although we'll see what happens if the stimulus runs out in the coming weeks, and folks that are unemployed aren't getting as much assistance anymore. I was talking to a bud tender, and she said that on the day that everybody, people eligible for stimulus checks, received it, was one of the largest sales days because people took their stimulus check and went and bought cannabis. So I think that's pretty classic. And so we'll see what happens if and when the stimulus runs out, how that impacts cannabis sales. But for the time being, it's proven to do really well. So it's interesting that hiring hasn't exactly followed that trend line. But I mean, overall, as more states come online, as more businesses get started, those are brand new jobs to be created. And I know that this industry is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the coming years, and obviously we'll be there to fill them.
Absolutely. And you're already filling them. And that's got to be classic that federal government deems cannabis illegal, but people are taking the federal government's money and using it to go buy cannabis. Yeah. That's what they can think about the federal government's opinion. What about for Vangst personally? I don't know, but I read a lot that a lot of the way that you guys would market yourself, find people, find clients, find, people that you're going to place is through business associations, through conferences, through job fairs, through, career fairs and college campuses, a lot of in-person stuff. Have you guys had to kind of pivot and figure out other ways to get in front of people and find both workers and companies for placement?
Totally. I mean, our entire business, particularly our sales strategy and our customer acquisition strategy and our candidate acquisition, was in person. I think I went on to 80 flights last year, flying around to every
Wow.
trade show and meeting with all of our clients in person with our sales team, hiring salespeople throughout the country. It was a very much, you go to a trade show and you meet every single client and every single candidate there. And we launch a new market and we throw a career fair as a way to drive candidates to come in, get signed up with the platform, put a face to a name. So we've really had to pivot and change our in-person strategy. I mean, I think that our team at Vangst has done a really incredible job, from our online summit series, like our virtual webinars, to all the effort they've been doing for virtual roundtables for industry specific employees, to the virtual career fair we have coming up. We've pivoted the strategy as is everybody else, but it's been a change for sure.
Very cool. And I love, you're talking about the things that you guys are doing. I love the nickname that you've given to the people that you place, the Vangsters, and the fact that the first people on the website, you call them the original Vangsters. Talk to us about how that nickname came about and the Vangster nights that you hold.
Yeah. So, like Graduana was just not really a professional name or a professional logo. And it didn't capture what we were doing, right? We were having people reach out to us to find them a COO, and no one's going to respond to a recruiter. No COO is going to respond to a recruiter from Graduana. So we needed to change the name, and everything was happening so fast. It was just Jordan, who was our first hire, and myself trying to think of a new name. We hired this marketing agency called Cannabis. I'm not sure that they're still around, but they were a cannabis specific place, and they only charged us $5,000, which was really all we could afford at the time. And we just started brainstorming different names. And I like the idea of catch, because like you're catching talent, you can get hooked. So we started looking up catch in different languages, and Vangst means catch in Dutch. So we started saying, Vangst. And we thought, what's cool, if you get placed, you're a Vangster, right? And so you can start building this community around people who get placed. And people in cannabis are so passionate about their work. No one, to the point I made earlier, we're not out here placing bankers. I don't think anybody that gets a banking job is, so passionate about their banking job, right? And so these people in cannabis are so passionate. And so to create a community with other Vangsters that they can learn from and network within, that was something that was really important to us from the beginning. And, I think it's a cool thing, like the community aspect. Nobody that gets placed on Indeed is an Indeeder, right? And so I think this is a cool thing that we have going that helps build up the community. And we do things for our Vangsters, right? We send them things in the mail. When we used to be able to do events, we would do, the Vangster Denver night, where anyone who is a Vangster can come and they can bring friends that then want to ultimately, want to be Vangsters, I guess. And yeah, it's been great. I love the Vangster. I love the Vangster name. Someone the other day wrote something online saying like, these people are running around calling themselves Vangsters. It's not politically correct. And I couldn't disagree with that more. It's our name, and it's the community that we've built, and our candidates and clients love it.
No, and I agree with exactly what you just said. The way that you describe it to me is people look at Vangst almost the same way they look at the university that they attended, right? I don't have it on the desk today, but I went to Florida State. I'm a very proud Seminole, right? And it just so happened, first of all, that's a controversial name as it is these days. Luckily, they support our school, but I'm a very proud Seminole. And if I was somebody who went through the Vangst system and knew other people who went through the Vangst system, and you guys have that market share, and there's so many people that you've worked with, I'd be very proud to come as an alumni of Vangst. I mean, you guys have almost, I don't want to say grad school, but you guys have created a very much like college-like community. Would you say that's kind of almost a model that you're replicating without, having to go to Vangst for 4 years?
I mean, it's a cool idea on the Vangst alumni, Vangster alumni piece. Yeah, I mean, I think we can always do more, and I think our marketing team would be really happy to hear you say that. That's kind of how you view it, because that's the goal. And just keep placing great people and have them connect us to other people and keep building out the community.
Well, you know what? Let's ignore those people that say Vangster isn't politically correct. They're just they're not happy people. Maybe they're a bunch of bankers. Who knows? Right. So we are getting towards the end of the interview here. And, this show was originally created was to bring people like you and to show people that the cannabis industry is not a bunch of stoners. It's not a bunch of lazy people. It's not people just sitting around smoking weed all day. This is a real industry with real industry problems. And there are amazing professionals in this industry. I kind of sit on this soapbox and say, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, there are going to be some incredible case studies of the entrepreneurs in this space, because not only did they do what they did, but they did it with less resources. They did it with more hurdles, and they did it with, and I mentioned earlier, in a regulatory environment that is constantly changing. So it's hard enough to be an entrepreneur as it is. Being an entrepreneur in this space, when you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, or you can't advertise on Facebook, and every single marketing playbook that you have doesn't work anymore because we're in cannabis and you have cannabis associated with you. I wanted to expose people to that, to the general public. But with that, we also get a lot of people that are just interested in the industry, that are passionate, and they are looking for jobs in this space. And I don't think that people realize that you don't have to be a cultivator. You don't have to be a dispensary associate. You could be, like you said, in sales, in IT, in finance and accounting, and be in the cannabis space. So for our viewership, for the people out there, for the next class of future Vangsters, what advice could you give them going to Vangst if they want to get into the cannabis space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously go to vangst.com, build a profile. We'll have someone from our team reach out and start to get to know you more. I think that everyone needs to keep in mind that this is a startup industry, and every company within the industry is a startup. So you're operating startup companies in a startup industry, and there's bumps in the road. It seems like every single day there's some type of fire that with our clients or something crazy that's happening. And it's a part of building this industry. And so if you want to be part of building this industry, you have to be ready to roll up your sleeves and roll with the punches and know that there's not a set playbook for every single thing. This isn't going and working at a large company where if you don't know the answer to something, there's 20 other people that you can kind of just slide it to and kind of slip through the cracks. At these companies, every single person is expected to come in and make an impact. And through that company making an impact, it helps make an impact in the industry and ultimately build the industry. And that's the exciting part of it. We're building an industry from ground zero. Every single company is part of it, and people are the biggest parts of companies. And so every single person that gets a job is part of building this industry and really changing history, right? Taking cannabis from being, we've already made history. We've made huge strides. The COVID is an example, going from illegitimate and illegal to essential, getting the 40,000 people that are in prison. I mean, we didn't touch much on, but we're very passionate about getting the 40,000 people that are incarcerated for cannabis out, because that's frankly just wrong. You and I are sitting here, I'm sitting here in my office, you're in your office, and I'm getting people jobs doing something that other 40,000 people are in jail for doing the same thing, about, getting those people out and making an impact in the reentry space, right? There's so many companies doing good along the way and really changing the world, I think. And so it's super cool. And I just went off on a total tangent, but every single person that gets a job is part of this cannabis industry story.
I encourage tangents on this show, and I can tell that it's something that you're passionate about. And I agree with you. I mean, I go on tons of rants on this show and tons of tangents talking about how I believe that the best way to recover from this pandemic and the best way to recover from really what's going on in our country right now, a good step for that is to legalize cannabis, right? For economics reasons, for jobs reasons, for social justice reasons. As you just mentioned, 40,000 people in jail, and more so for minor cannabis use or minor cannabis offenses. And people don't realize that that was used to target minorities, right? To lock them up. And that's, I couldn't imagine just a few years ago, I mean, pre-2010, going to jail for an extended period of time for a cannabis offense. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, it's illegal. And people are making a good amount of money doing what you got put in jail for. So if there's anything else that you want to jump on a soapbox on and talk about on this topic, I'm more than happy to let you finish off on that.
I mean, I think you said it well, right? I mean, the war on drugs drastically negatively impacted minorities, and cannabis is a huge part of that. And so of the 40,000 people incarcerated for cannabis, the large majority are minorities, and it's extremely unfair. And I speak to people on a very regular basis who did 15-year sentences for cannabis. I spoke to a woman the other day who did, I think it was a 12-year sentence because her boyfriend was selling cannabis and somehow she got wrapped up in it. And, you know, she couldn't afford a good lawyer. She was Black. There was so many parts of the story that are so unfair and not right. And it's up to every single person in the cannabis industry to get all 40,000 of those people out of jail. And so, and where we are trying to help, we partner with Last Prisoner Project. And so we're helping them. I mean, the lifeblood of any nonprofit like Last Prisoner Project is capital and cash. So we've helped them in terms of raising capital. And I think anybody that's watching should make a donation to Last Prisoner Project. But then where Vangst gets involved is when Last Prisoner Project gets people out, we help them in the reentry process. So from resume writing to interview prep to actually introducing them to employers, because I don't know the exact statistic, but over 75% of people that get out of jail, if they don't get a job, over 75% go back in. Jobs is the number one way to keep people out of prison. And so that's where we think we can help with this problem. But yeah, I just think anybody that's watching that's in the cannabis industry, we all have a responsibility here to correct these injustices. And yeah, I guess I can end with that.
Absolutely. Well, Karson, I thank you. And I often do this with businesses like Ryan's, businesses like Jane, a lot of these technology platforms, you know, you being one of the biggest job opportunities for people in the cannabis space. I think what you're doing, bringing attention to the space, making sure that these companies can operate, bringing valuable workers to these cannabis companies, it helps fuel our industry and it helps keep it going. And the fact that you're so young and so passionate and you have so much more to go, I'm really excited to watch your journey, and the rest of us at C-Lab are really excited to watch your journey. So before we let you go, we'll let you plug whatever you need, obviously Vangst.com, any social media, anything else?
No, I really appreciate you having me on, and appreciate you saying, you know, I am getting older. And so I appreciate, you know, all the amount of times you said that you think I'm young, because, you know, I'm getting up there. So thank you for making me feel good about my age. And
I'm older than you. You're not allowed to say that.
yeah, I guess all I'll say is if you're looking for a job in cannabis, visit Vangst.com. If you're looking to hire in cannabis, also visit Vangst.com or reach out to us directly. And we're looking to build the community out. And thank you for having me. It was a really great interview, I think.
Absolutely. No, the pleasure was all mine, and thank you so much. And before we go, folks, we've got one more read to do. This episode was also brought to you by S2S Insurance Specialists. Folks, if you learned anything from this podcast, it's that we just don't play in the cannabis industry. These are real businesses with real business issues, and real businesses should have real insurance. My friends David and Eric Ron at S2S Insurance Specialists are the experts you need to get the right insurance for your company, your team, and even your supply chain. They offer director and officer liability, employee protection liability, product liability, cargo, transport, warehouse insurance, property and casualty, cyber defense, and so much more. Check them out on their website at s2sinsure.com. That is s2sinsure.com. Folks, this has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind, and we are out.